The moment the single dad stepped into the small desert grocery store, something felt strangely wrong. The wind outside howled through the dusty Wild West street like it carried secrets. He only came for milk and bread, nothing dramatic, nothing life-changing today. But the quiet store felt tense, like a story waiting to reveal itself. Behind the counter stood a young cashier, barely looking older than 20. Her hands trembled so badly that the coins kept slipping across the wooden counter. Most people in line ignored it, pretending nothing unusual was happening tonight. But the single dad noticed everything, because life had taught him to watch closely. He gently placed the groceries down and studied the girl's shaking hands carefully. That simple observation would soon uncover a truth nobody inside expected. Now listen closely, because this moment changed everything for that tired father. He cleared his throat politely, trying not to embarrass the nervous young cashier. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice calm like someone used to comforting others. "I couldn't help noticing your hands are shaking pretty badly right now." The girl froze instantly, like someone had suddenly exposed a hidden secret. For a moment she looked toward the store door, almost like she feared someone outside. Then she forced a weak smile, pretending nothing was wrong at all. "I'm fine," she whispered quietly, though her voice betrayed the truth completely. The father wasn't convinced, because he recognized that kind of fear instantly. He had seen that exact look before during the hardest years of his life. You see, raising a child alone teaches you how to read people deeply. Every sleepless night and every sacrifice sharpens a parent's understanding of fear. The father leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice so nobody else would overhear. "Look," he said gently, "I'm not here to cause trouble for you tonight. But someone shaking like that usually means something serious is happening." The girl swallowed hard, clearly fighting a battle between silence and honesty. The line behind him grew impatient, people shifting and checking their watches. But the father refused to rush this moment, sensing something important unfolding. He remembered how strangers once ignored him during his own darkest days. And he promised himself long ago never to ignore someone silently asking for help. The cashier slowly scanned the bread, but the barcode reader beeped unevenly. Her hands trembled even worse now, like fear was tightening its grip. Finally she looked up at the single dad with glassy, exhausted eyes. "You shouldn't ask questions," she whispered under her breath very carefully. "Some things are safer if people pretend they never noticed anything strange." The father raised an eyebrow, realizing this situation was bigger than nerves. He glanced around the small store, noticing two rough-looking men near the door. They weren't shopping, they were simply watching the cashier with cold expressions. The atmosphere suddenly made sense, like pieces of a puzzle locking together. And the father felt the protective instinct that every parent understands immediately. He leaned forward again, speaking just loud enough for her to hear clearly. "Are those men the reason your hands can't stop shaking tonight?" The girl's face turned pale, confirming the answer before she spoke a word. She quickly looked down, pretending to organize the cash drawer nervously. "You should take your groceries and leave," she whispered urgently this time. "They don't like people asking questions around here after sunset." But the father didn't move an inch from the counter. Instead, he calmly rested his arms on the wood and watched quietly. Because fear controlling innocent people always made him deeply angry inside. And something about this girl reminded him painfully of his own daughter. Now here's where the story takes a turn nobody inside expected. The father leaned even closer and asked one simple, unexpected question. "Do you have family waiting for you at home tonight?" The girl hesitated, then slowly shook her head with sadness in her eyes. "My little brother," she whispered, voice cracking like fragile glass breaking. "He's alone at home because I have to work double shifts lately." The father nodded slowly, understanding the weight of responsibility immediately. He knew exactly how heavy life becomes when someone depends entirely on you. "But those men," he continued quietly, glancing toward the store entrance again. "Why are they watching you like they own the place tonight?" The girl's eyes filled with tears she desperately tried to hide. "They say I owe them money my father borrowed before he disappeared." They come every night demanding payment I simply cannot afford. If I don't pay soon, they say my brother could get hurt." Her voice cracked as the words finally escaped after weeks of fear. The father stood completely silent for several seconds after hearing that confession. Not because he was confused, but because the situation angered him deeply. Nobody should threaten children just to collect money from desperate workers. The store suddenly felt smaller, like tension was pressing against every wall. And the two men near the door were starting to notice their conversation. One of them slowly walked toward the counter with a crooked grin. "Well, well," the man said, voice rough like gravel on desert roads. "Looks like our little cashier found herself a new friend tonight." The girl's hands began shaking even worse than before. The father remained calm, standing tall despite the obvious threat approaching. "Just paying for groceries," he replied casually, sliding money across the counter. The man laughed loudly, clearly enjoying the girl's visible fear. "You should mind your business, cowboy," he sneered with mocking confidence. But the father simply looked him straight in the eyes calmly. "Threatening families for money doesn't sound like honest business to me." The second man stepped closer now, trying to intimidate the single dad. "You planning to solve her problems tonight, hero?" he mocked loudly. The father paused thoughtfully before answering with unexpected honesty. "No," he said slowly, "I'm planning to stop you creating them." The men laughed again, assuming he was bluffing without understanding the truth. Because what they didn't realize was something very important about this father. He wasn't just a tired man raising a child alone in town. Years ago he served as a sheriff's deputy before life forced changes. He knew exactly how to deal with bullies who preyed on the weak. And he also knew the current sheriff happened to be his old partner. The father calmly pulled out his phone and dialed one familiar number. The men's laughter faded slightly as they watched him make the call. "Evening, Sheriff," he said casually while maintaining steady eye contact. "I'm at Miller's Grocery and you might want to stop by. There are two gentlemen here making threats against a young woman." The room fell completely silent after hearing the word sheriff mentioned. The cashier stared at him in disbelief, realizing someone finally defended her. The two men suddenly looked far less confident than before. One whispered angrily to the other, clearly reconsidering their plan tonight. Because bullies always shrink quickly when real consequences appear suddenly. Within minutes the distant sound of police sirens echoed through the dusty street. The men rushed toward the door, hoping to escape before trouble arrived. But the father simply stepped slightly sideways, blocking their path calmly. "You two should stay," he said firmly without raising his voice at all. "The sheriff will want to hear everything about these friendly visits." The cashier watched with wide eyes, amazed by the sudden turn of events. Her shaking hand slowly began calming for the first time all night. The store door burst open as the sheriff entered with two deputies. One quick explanation later, the situation was completely under control. And the two men were escorted outside in handcuffs under flashing lights. When the chaos finally settled, the store felt peaceful again. The young cashier leaned against the counter, breathing with visible relief. "I can't believe you helped me like that," she said softly. "Most people see trouble and pretend they never noticed anything." The father smiled gently, picking up the bag of groceries quietly. "Someone once helped me when my daughter needed it most," he replied. Kindness has a strange way of traveling forward through different lives. The girl wiped her eyes, gratitude shining brighter than fear now. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe walking home tonight. And sometimes safety is the greatest gift a stranger can offer. Before leaving, the father paused and looked back at the counter. "Make sure you lock the store early tonight," he advised kindly. "And check on your little brother as soon as possible." The girl nodded eagerly, smiling with genuine relief finally returning. "I will," she promised with new strength in her voice. "And thank you for asking about my shaking hands." The father chuckled quietly, adjusting the grocery bag in his arms. Sometimes one simple question can change someone's entire night. He tipped his hat politely and stepped into the cool desert air. The wind outside no longer felt mysterious, only calm and quiet. Now, if this story reminded you how powerful kindness and courage can be, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this again. Hit the like button if you believe standing up for others still matters today. And tell me in the comments what you would have done in that moment. Would you have noticed the shaking hands behind the counter tonight? Or would you have walked away like everyone else in that line? Your thoughts and experiences make these stories even more meaningful here. So share them below and join this growing community of storytellers. Until the next Wild West story, stay kind, stay brave, and stay curious. And remember, sometimes heroes are simply people who choose to notice.